Good afternoon, and thank you for checking me out here at the Real Counselor's Corner. As always, I start by letting you know how you can get this message: IG, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So make sure you are following me on all those platforms. So today it is Sunday, and today I'm gonna talk about, or not necessarily talk about, but try to provide an understanding of the teaching process for our parents, and also what we can do as parents to assist our children in making sure they are meeting standards. So I'm going to get into that. So this is for my parents that have a student in public school, male or female, it doesn't matter. I am speaking specifically about public school because charter schools and private schools, they operate a little different. I have no experience with those role groups, so I'm speaking specifically about public schools. Some of the things that I speak on may be specific to the district that I work in, but in most cases what I speak on is general for at least the state of Kentucky. So all right, so let's start from the ending and walk backwards just to give an understanding of the teaching process. So regardless of what grade your child is, there are a group of people that sit down at the state level, and they determine what standards each child should meet in order to be considered, on grade level or developing, on, what am I saying? On time, developing on time. So they set these standards first, all the way kindergarten, all the way through 12. And then once you get into, the separation of subjects, each subject has their set of standards. Standards are telling you, your child must learn this in order to be considered ready for the following grade. So as a teacher, regardless of what subject you're teaching, regardless of what role group, so it doesn't matter if you're elementary, high school, or middle school, or if you teach science or math, regardless, here in the state of Kentucky, there's a curriculum map. And this curriculum map, the purpose of it is it tells you this is what you should be teaching as a teacher. These are the standards that you should make sure your students master during this particular grade in this particular subject. So those standards are to be met within that year, based on what the state has decided in order for a student to be ready to move on to the next year and be prepared. So what I want parents to understand is this. What happens is that as a teacher, you are trying to make sure you are touching on everything on that curriculum map, because the students are going to be assessed on those standards. So if you do not get through the curriculum for that year and we get to the state assessment at the end of the year, there may be something on that assessment that you did not get to because you did not get through the curriculum. So that means not to call it a race, but you have to cover this curriculum within the year, prior to the assessment. And those standards are based on what's going to be assessed. And assessments are necessary as much as we. I'm not gonna say we. As much as I'm not a big fan of them. They're necessary. The assessments are the benchmarks that let you know if you're meeting a set criteria. So we have to have the assessments. Now, how they're done, those things can be worked on. How they're written, of course, that can be worked on, but they're definitely necessary. So the standards are based on what's going to be assessed. So for my parents, this is the part I want that we need to understand as parents. If our child is in a class, and let's say math, I always use math. And the reason I use math when I try to explain, what we're discussing is because math is one of those subjects where it's based on the previous steps. So in order to understand division, you must first learn multiplication. In order to understand multiplication, you must first learn how to add. So, math is kind of something that builds on. And math is one of those subjects where, if you fall too far behind, it's very difficult to catch up. So I always use math. So let's take math, for example. If you are a third grader and, you are in an elementary class, there's a certain set of standards that should be covered, but you fall behind in math. In many cases, that teacher is going to have to move on to the next standard to be taught. So as a third grader, you may find a child that is having to move on to learn division, even though they hadn't mastered multiplication. And the reason the teacher must move on with the instruction is because there are a set of standards that must be covered in that calendar year. So that puts the student in a situation where they're moving on to a new skill when they haven't mastered the previous skill. And this, if no one intervenes, if there's not an intervention that's put in place, this can create a struggle for the student from that point on in their educational career. Because unless you intervene on a skill that has been missed or a skill that a student lacks, then they're going to have to play catch up, because the instruction is going to continue to move. Because things must be covered before they get to the assessment in order for students to have a fair shot of doing their best on the assessment. Educators must make sure they're covering everything that the standards state should be covered. So as parents, this is what we need to do, and this is what I'm encouraging all of us to do. As I always say, keep in contact with your teacher, your school. Ask things like, what level is my child reading on? What level is my child performing on in math? So if you are in the state of Kentucky, you can ask them, and they may say, well, your child is apprenticed in reading. They may say your child is distinguished in math. All right. So that some of the terms you may hear are novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished. And these terms are used to explain the level of performance for a student in the state of Kentucky in math and reading. So if they tell you your child is a novice, that means your child is performing below grade level. All right. Apprentice, your child is, I would say, at grade level. Proficient, they're at or, I won't say at or, but they are above grade level. So we got novice below, apprentice at, proficient above, and distinguished is you're at the highest point of that particular learning at that content area or a particular standard. You are distinguished. So the highest you can go is distinguished, the lowest you can go is novice. So if you talk to a school and they tell you where your child is novice in reading or novice in math, next thing you need to ask them is, what interventions are being put in place? What do I mean by that? So if your child is novice in reading or math, then the school is obligated to intervene. That means they must put something in place extra for your child that's going to help them catch up on the skills that they've missed. All right. Parents, if your school, has, a lot of schools have computer programs that can be used at home. If they encourage you to use these interventions at home, please do so. They can help. And as parents, sometimes we're looking for things to help our children. In a lot of cases, the schools will send you things. So make sure you keep in contact with them and, implement those interventions. Because the instruction is going to move on, so we have to make sure some interventions are in place. So yes, with reading, if they say he's novice or she's novice, ask about the interventions. All right. Same thing with math. They come back and tell you your child is novice, meaning they're performing at least a grade level, maybe 2 grade levels below where they should be performing. Find out and make sure some type of interventions are being implemented. If that is, your child participates in 30 minutes of small group math, where they're sitting in a small group with the teacher, and with that small group they're able to focus on a group of students that may be struggling with the the same skills. That's an intervention, depending on your child's level of need. But meet with your child's teacher, contact the school, and find out what interventions are being placed if your child is a novice in math or reading. All right. So the purpose of this video is for, one, explain to you how the instruction in your child's classroom, why it must move on. It's not that the teacher wants to leave your child behind or leave our children behind. It's just that there are certain things that must be covered. And we as parents must do our part to make sure, our child is not left behind. And we do that by intervening, whether that is collaborating with the school and putting something together, whether that is us getting our own programs, and I didn't mention that as parents, you can go out and search for things. The internet, there's a ton of materials that are out there. You can go to yard sales, man, and get a book on multiplication, a book on reading comprehension. We can intervene in that manner. It's okay to do schoolwork outside of school hours. Nothing wrong with that. So, as parents, if we are aware that our children are performing below grade level, speak to the school, see what they're doing, and then let's do our part as parents to intervene as well. So, as always, I hope what I spoke on was helpful, and I did not just get on here and ramble for looks about 10 minutes today. So I hope it was helpful and useful to you. And like I always say, if not, file it and just pass it on to the next person that may need it. I'm going to end with my plug. September the 11th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. I'm going to be at Dugan Best Community Center, Owensboro, Kentucky. Let's Build Series Part 1. Talking to young men grades 5th through 12th. Come and check me out.